Could I just buy the socks? Of course. Purchased socks are cheaper and faster and easier, so why do I knit? Partly it's something to do with my hands, partly it soothes me, but the best part of being a knitter for me by far is the community that I found as a result of my craft. Worldwide Knit in Public Day is a day when knitters step out of yarn stores and celebrate our craft and our artistry en masse. Sometimes it's a few people sitting in a park or on chairs in front of a yarn store, and sometimes it's more organized and there are prizes and demonstrations and cake. The point of it, however, is to bring our community and our culture out into the public sphere where it can be seen by people who aren't just us. I started knitting when I had 9 friends get pregnant all around the same time and I couldn't cross-stitch gifts that fast. I went and got myself a book and some sticks and string, and I learned how to make a scarf. Then, because babies don't wear scarves so much, I learned how to make tiny hats. And then I sent them to all the people with babies, and it was much faster than cross-stitching, and I found that I had been bitten by the knitting bug. And in fact, this was more than a hobby, it was a mild obsession, and I wanted people to share it with. I would go to my local yarn store, and sometimes I would see a group of women sitting and knitting and laughing and drinking tea. I'd heard of the Stitch and Bitch phenomenon, and I'd been to the Kitchener-Waterloo Knitters Guild meeting to see a very famous knitter speak. And yes, there are very famous knitters. But my knitting was done at home in front of the television or on the commuter bus to and from my job in Toronto. I decided to try out one of the knit nights at my local yarn store, and it's been a rare Thursday evening since then that I haven't been in attendance. Around the same time, I discovered a website called Ravelry. One of the features of the site is groups or forums where people can discuss their interests, and it's not just limited to crafting-related interests. One of the groups I joined was a fan group for the writing of Terry Pratchett, and when the author announced that he had been diagnosed with a rare type of early-onset Alzheimer's, someone in the group suggested that we knit him an Afghan. Each knitter who was interested would knit an appropriately themed 6x6-inch square and send it off to one very patient woman in Scotland who would sew all the squares together. As we knit, we chronicled the stories of our creativity in the online forums. All the while, squares were being sent to Scotland from all over the world, and in the end, totaling 20 squares, along with a message of each of us. Sir Terry was scheduled to be at an event close to our patient Scott, so she contacted his assistant, explained the endeavor, and asked to be able to meet with the author. Seeing that photo of the Pratchgan, as we called it, being given to him, knowing how many people and creative hours had gone into the making of it, it was a pretty amazing thing and really exemplified how community can happen in a virtual space as well as a physical one. These positive experiences prompted me to join the Kitchener-Waterloo Knitters Guild. Each month from September through May, a member of the knitting community comes to spend about 45 minutes talking to the membership about a knitting-related topic. In my first 2 years of membership, I learned more and made more connections in the knitting community than I had expected. At the end of those 2 years, I decided to volunteer for the role of program coordinator, a decision that was prompted by watching the women on the executive council and wanting to be a part of the community that they were creating. My role is to come up with a theme for the year and then book the speakers that visit each month. When I took over last year, I really didn't have a good idea of what I was doing, and I felt like I was working in a little bit of a vacuum. So in turning to the online community of knitters, I started following some well-known and established knitters. I realized that some of them already had ties to the community that I was servicing. They already had relationships, despite being in separate cities and sometimes countries. I also talked to my Guelph community, and from that I was able to make other more local connections, and that's something that in the coming year I really want to focus more on. The Guild also offers workshops, and with a large number of the people that attend the regular meetings, it's really difficult to impart skill-based knowledge. So these workshops are a chance for members to spend time in smaller groups and get to do some hands-on learning. For the coming year, I'm lucky enough to have a volunteer in the workshop coordinator position, and she has some wonderful ideas about ways to energize our membership and create more of those relationships that spurred me into volunteering in the first place. With the attendance of around 2,000 people at the yearly Knitters Fair, which is largely advertised as a day of shopping and some seminars, you have a chance to help with the organization. You get to see what it really makes this a remarkable event. The organization of the day is entirely volunteer-driven. It takes about 100 members of our community pulling together to make the day successful. To me, this is community in action. You get to see pockets of people coming together, sharing a few words and moving apart, working on a common goal. Or the people who come to the event, who maybe only see each other once a year, and you get to see them laugh and hug and think, this is all because of just one shared interest. Now, as much as I value my online and guild communities, the place and people that set me on fire are here. A while ago, we decided to have a knitting pub crawl, not because of any special event, but just because we like each other. So one of the women in our group found a beer bottle cozy pattern, and we set off together to knit in bars and be our slightly inappropriate and occasionally rowdy selves. I know that I don't need to be a knitter to have the kind of community that I do. I know that people find it in many other places. But to me, this community, the knitters, that is why I don't just buy the socks.